The air down here tastes like death. Not the clean death of a laser gun shot or a knife between the ribs, but the slow, grinding death of 1 billion years of rot compressed into every breath. My lungs burn with each inhale, the chemical fog searing tissue that stopped being healthy when I was maybe 10 standard years old. I can feel the toxins settling into the bottom of my chest like sediment in still water, adding to the collection of poisons that have been building there for 17 years of breathing this filth. The rebreather mask strapped to my face helps, when the filters aren't clogged with Sump slime, but right now, the cartridge is 3 months past dead, and all it does is make the bad air taste like rubber and mold instead of just chemicals and decay. My name is Ren. I think that's my name. Memory gets strange down here where time means nothing and the dark presses against your skull like a vice. I remember my mother calling me Ren, back when I was small enough to fit in the good hiding spots, before the radiation sickness turned her bones to jelly, and she spent 6 months dying in our pocket of air, while I listened to her whimper and beg for water I couldn't give her. "The Emperor protects," she used to whisper in those final days, her voice thin as paper. "The Emperor protects." But he didn't protect her. He doesn't protect anyone down here in the sump bottom of Hive Tertius, where the waste of 50 billion souls above filters down through kilometers of pipes and tunnels to pool in vast lakes of toxic sludge that glow faint green in the darkness. This is the Hive bottom, the very deepest level of the Hive city, where the original foundation piles have collapsed into themselves over millennia, creating a nearly solid layer of rubble made from decayed hab blocks, shattered factory domes, and the compressed bones of forgotten buildings. The rubble forms pockets of air, some as small as a coffin, others large enough to hold 20 people if you didn't mind breathing the same air until you all suffocated together. These pockets link through tunnels carved by leaking chemicals, pathways burned through solid rockcrete by industrial waste so corrosive it dissolves stone like sugar in water. I wake every morning in complete darkness, because there is no morning here. There is no day, no night, no cycle of light to measure time by. There is only the endless black pressing down from above, only the weight of the Hive city crushing the air from your lungs. Only the knowledge that you are at the absolute bottom of everything and there is nowhere lower to fall. My sleeping spot sits in a pocket, maybe 3 meters across, tucked into a crack between 2 collapsed support pillars. The walls weep with condensation, thick with dissolved metals, and the floor beneath me stays perpetually damp with something that might be water if you're generous with your definitions. I own a piece of plastic sheeting I use as a blanket, though calling it plastic at this point is like calling corpse starch food. It's just something that was once manufactured, now broken down by time and chemicals into something that barely serves its purpose. The first thing I do every day is check myself for mutations. The radiation and chemical exposure down here changes you, warps your flesh in ways that make you less human and more something else. I run my hands over my skin in the dark, feeling for new lumps, new growths, extra bones pushing up beneath the surface. My left hand has 6 fingers now, the extra one growing between the pinky and ring finger over the course of 6 months. It's smaller than the others, weak and clumsy, but it bends and flexes, and I can't bring myself to cut it off because that feels like admitting something I'm not ready to admit. My skin on my back has gotten thick and scaly in patches, rough like old leather, and sometimes when I bend too quick I feel it crack and ooze clear fluid that reeks of sulfur. The lesions are worse today. Open sores on my forearms where the chemical fog has eaten through my clothes and burned the flesh beneath, leaving raw wounds that won't close properly because my body stopped healing right maybe 5 years ago. I have a collection of rags I use as bandages, strips torn from clothing I've scavenged over the years, and I wrap them around my arms with practiced efficiency. The rags need changing every 3 days or they rot into my wounds and I'm 2 days overdue, so I peel away fabric that's grown into scabbed flesh and try not to whimper at the pain. Pain is common down here, It's the baseline state of existence. You either learn to function through it or you die, and I'm not dead yet. Breakfast consists of fungus scraped from the walls, pale growth that smell like ammonia and taste worse. The fungus grows in patches wherever moisture collects, feeding on the chemical soup that coats every surface down here. I learned early that the white fungus with blue spots will kill you in an hour, vomiting blood while your insides liquefy, and the orange fungus with the black veins causes hallucinations so vivid you can't tell what's real anymore. The gray fungus, though, the flat patches that look like dried leather, that's safe enough if you're desperate. It doesn't provide much nutrition, barely enough to keep you upright, but it fills your stomach and the nausea only lasts an hour or two after eating. Water I get from condensation collected in a dented metal container I found 3 years ago. The water runs down the walls, gathering in depressions and cracks, and I filter it through layers of cloth before drinking. It still tastes like metal and electricity, still burns going down, but it's wet, and that's what matters. Dehydration kills faster than starvation down here. I've seen people so desperate for clean water, they tried drinking from the Sump Sea itself, the great toxic lake that covers most of the Hive bottom. They lasted maybe 6 hours before their throats blistered shut and their organs dissolved from the inside. The Sump Sea is death in liquid form, billions of liters of human waste and factory discharge and promethium runoff accumulated over thousands of years. It glows faintly in the dark, that eerie green-yellow luminescence that marks chemicals so toxic they burn with their own light. My tools lay arranged on a flat piece of plasteel I use as a table. A length of rusted pipe maybe 1/2 meter long, heavy enough to use as a club. A shard of plasteel with one edge honed on rocks until it can cut, wrapped at one end with wire to make a handle. A corroded knife I found in the chest of a corpse 2 years back, the blade pitted with rust but still sharp enough to stab. A chemical torch made from a sealed tube filled with reactive compounds that glow when you shake them, giving off light for maybe 2 hours before dying. These tools are my life. They represent years of scavenging, of lucky finds, of calculated risks that paid off instead of killing me. The philosophy of survival in the Sump bottom is simple. Take nothing for granted, trust no one completely, and always know your exit routes. The Emperor protects those who protect themselves, my mother used to say, and she was right, even if she didn't live to prove it. The Imperium teaches that the God Emperor watches over all his subjects, that faith and prayer will shield you from harm, that righteousness is its own reward. But faith doesn't fill your stomach. Prayer doesn't filter toxins from your lungs. Righteousness doesn't keep mutants from eating your corpse after you die. Down here, you survive through caution, through violence when necessary, through knowing when to fight and when to run. Today, I plan to scavenge a collapsed dome section about 2 hours' travel from my sleeping pocket. I found it last week while running from a mutant pack, stumbled into the ruins by accident, and barely escaped with my life. But I saw enough in those panicked minutes to know there might be something worth taking. Collapsed domes sometimes contain intact chambers, sealed spaces where the crushing weight of the rubble above created pressure pockets instead of destroying everything. These chambers can hold treasure, working technology from before the collapse, metal components still usable, even food stores if you're incredibly lucky, though luck like that doesn't exist in the Sump bottom. I checked my gear one final time before leaving. The pipe on my belt, the plasteel shard in my boot, the knife in my hand, the torch in my pocket. My clothes are rags held together by wire and prayer, offering no protection from the cold or the chemicals, but better than nothing. The rebreather mask with its dead filters still covers my face because it makes me feel safer, even if it's not. Psychological comfort matters when you're alone in the dark for days at a time. The tunnels between pockets are the most dangerous part of any scavenging run. Narrow passages burned through rubble by acidic drainage, some barely wide enough to squeeze through sideways, others opening into caverns where the floor has collapsed into sub-levels below. The walls drip with condensation and worse things, fluids that burn when they touch exposed skin, slimes that grow and move and might be alive in some horrible sense. I navigate by memory and by touch, one hand always on the wall, counting intersections and passages to avoid getting lost. Getting lost in the tunnels means death. You wander until exhaustion takes you, until you collapse in the dark and never wake up, until your body joins the thousands of others scattered through the sump bottom like unwanted garbage. Half an hour into the walk, I hear something moving in a parallel tunnel. The sound echoes strangely in the confined space, footsteps that splash in standing water, breath that wheezes and gurgles. I freeze, pressing myself flat against the wall, hand tight on my knife. Down here, anything that moves is either prey or predator, and I'm not large enough to be the latter. The footsteps pass, fading into the distance, and I wait 10 full minutes before moving again. Patience keeps you alive. Impatience gets you killed. The collapsed dome section looms out of the darkness like a dead giant's rib cage. Massive structural beams twisted and broken, ferrocrete slabs canted at angles that shouldn't be possible. The hollow spaces between filled with rubble and debris that's been settling for who knows how long. I approach cautiously, testing each footstep before committing my weight, because unstable ground down here can collapse and drop you into sub-levels where the toxins are so thick you suffocate in seconds. The entrance I found last week is still open, a gap between two massive blocks, maybe wide enough for me to squeeze through if I exhale completely. The chamber inside is maybe 10 meters across, the ceiling low enough I can touch it standing straight. Ancient equipment lines the walls, consoles and machines covered in dust and corrosion, their purpose is lost to time. This was probably a monitoring station once, back when the Hive bottom was still maintained, back before everything down here was abandoned to the darkness and the mutants. I move through the space carefully, examining everything, looking for items that might still have value. Value in the sump bottom is measured differently than above. Working technology tops the list, any piece of equipment that still functions, because technology is power, and power means survival. A working power cell could run a light source for years, could power a weapon, could be traded for food and water and medicine. Metal scraps have value if they're not completely corroded, because metal can be shaped into tools or weapons or traded to the reclaimators who come down from the Underhive proper looking for salvage. Chemical concentrations have value if you can identify them and transport them safely, because some chemicals can be refined into useful compounds or sold to the right people. Even intact plastics have value, anything that hasn't been reduced to brittle fragments by time and exposure. But this chamber has been picked over before. The obvious loot is gone, taken by whoever found this place first, maybe decades ago or maybe last week. I search thoroughly anyway because sometimes people miss things, especially small things in dark corners. Behind a collapsed console, I find corroded metal beams, their surfaces pitted with rust but still structurally sound enough to cut into smaller pieces. Wiring runs through the walls, ancient cables whose insulation has decayed, but whose copper cores remain intact. I work for an hour, extracting the wiring, cutting it free with my plasteel shard, coiling it into loops I can carry. Copper wiring is always valuable, always tradable, and I've got maybe 3 kilos here if I can get it back safely. Then I hear the sound that makes my blood freeze. Movement in the entrance tunnel. Something large forcing its way through the narrow gap, metal scraping on stone, breath rattling like a broken bellows. I turn slowly, knife in hand, knowing that fighting in a confined space gives me no advantage. The thing that emerges into the chamber was human once, maybe 20 years ago, maybe 50. Time and mutation have transformed it into something else entirely. It walks on 4 limbs now, 2 original legs twisted into reverse-jointed haunches, 2 arms so elongated they touch the ground like a second set of legs. Extra joints bulge beneath skin that's become translucent and waxy, showing the bones beneath like shadows behind dirty glass. Bioluminescent growths cluster around its spine, pulsing faint blue light that makes the shadows dance. Its mouth has split vertically as well as horizontally, creating a 4-way opening ringed with teeth that look like they've been adapted for gnawing metal and stone as much as flesh. We stare at each other for a long moment, 2 desperate creatures at the bottom of the world, both trying to survive another day. I can see intelligence in its eyes, human thought buried under layers of mutation and madness, but still present. It speaks, the words broken and slurred by its malformed mouth, but understandable if you listen carefully. "Mine," it says, voice wet and thick. "Old territory. Leave metal." I calculate quickly. Fighting this thing would be suicide. It outweighs me by 50 kilos and has 4 limbs to my 2. Running might work, but I'd have to abandon the copper wiring I just spent an hour collecting. Negotiation feels impossible, but it spoke, which means it thinks, which means maybe there's room for reason. I keep my knife visible but not threatening, trying to appear dangerous enough to not be prey, but not aggressive enough to provoke attack. "Half," I say, my voice rough from breathing chemical fog. "You take half, I take half. Fair split." The creature considers this, its multiple eyes blinking independently, bioluminescent growths pulsing in what might be thought patterns. "Fair," it finally says. "Not eat you. Just want metal." We divide the copper wiring into 2 piles, working in tense silence. The creature's fingers are tipped with bone claws that click on the stone floor, and up close I can see old scars covering its body. Evidence of a life spent fighting for every scrap of survival. When the division is complete, it takes its share and backs toward the entrance, never turning away from me, still cautious even after negotiation. "Name," it says, pausing at the gap. "Was Gren. Remember that much." "Ren," I respond, because even in the Sump bottom, names matter. They're proof you were human once, proof you had an identity before everything went wrong. Gren nods, a human gesture preserved despite inhuman anatomy, and disappears back into the tunnels. I wait 5 minutes, listening for any sign of ambush, before gathering my share of the wiring and preparing to leave. The encounter weighs on me as I work. Even among the absolute damned, there are still rules. Still some shadow of civilized behavior. Gren could have killed me, could have taken everything, but chose to negotiate instead. That means something down here where violence is usually the only language anyone speaks. But I can't think about philosophy and meaning when there's still scavenging to do. The chamber has more to offer if I look carefully enough, and I've got time before I need to head back. I search deeper into the wreckage, following a crack in the far wall that looks like it might lead to another sealed section. The crack is narrow, barely wide enough for my emaciated frame, and I have to push through sideways, feeling metal edges scrape my ribs through my thin clothing. The passage opens into another chamber, smaller than the first, maybe 3 meters on each side. And there, sitting on a shelf as if waiting for me, I find something that makes my heart stop. A filtration mask. A real, honest-to-emperor air filtration mask, still sealed in its protective container. The container is corroded on the outside, its surface pitted with age, but the seal holds intact, visible through the transparent section. Inside, the mask looks pristine, its filters still white and clean, its strap still flexible, its seal still intact. This is archaeotech from before the fall, from when the Hive bottom was still maintained and workers needed protection from industrial hazards. This mask could filter the chemical fog that fills the tunnels, could screen out toxic particles, could let me breathe clean air for the first time in years. This mask could extend my life by decades. My hands shake as I lift the container from the shelf. It's not heavy, maybe 2 kilos, small enough to carry easily. The emotional weight, though, that's crushing. This represents hope, actual genuine hope. Something I stopped believing in around the time my father disappeared into the Sump Sea and never came back. With this mask, I could scavenge deeper, explore areas too toxic for unprotected humans, find better salvage, improve my survival chances significantly. But it also represents a trade. This mask is valuable enough to exchange for months of food and water, for medicine that might treat my festering wounds, for information about safe routes and hidden caches. Keep it or trade it. Personal survival or immediate resources. Years added to my life or guaranteed survival for the next few months. The decision feels impossible, like trying to choose which part of yourself to cut off. But I make it anyway, because survival in the sump bottom means making hard choices every single day. I'll trade the mask. I'll trade it because staying alive today matters more than adding years to a life that might end tomorrow. Because food in my stomach now is worth more than better lungs in a future I might not reach. Because hope is a luxury, and I need practical resources to survive. The journey back to my sleeping pocket takes 3 hours, because I'm being extra cautious with my valuable cargo. The copper wiring I coil around my waist under my rags, and the filtration mask I carry in my hands like a holy relic, never letting it touch the filthy surfaces around me. I avoid the main tunnels where other scavengers might travel, taking longer routes through narrower passages where ambush is harder. Robbery is common down here. Anyone with something valuable is a target, and I'm carrying more value than most sump dwellers see in a year. But I need to cross the Sump Sea to reach the nearest trading post, and that means taking risks I'd normally avoid. The trading post sits on the far shore of one of the smaller toxic lakes that branch off from the main Sump Sea, maybe 2 kilometers from my current position. The only way there is across the water because the tunnels that used to circle the lake collapsed decades ago, leaving nothing but flooded rubble and chemical fog. My raft is hidden near the shore, a construction of sealed drums and plasteel sheets lashed together with salvaged cable. It's not seaworthy by any reasonable definition, barely floats when empty, lists dangerously to one side no matter how I balance the weight. But it's transportation across water that would dissolve my flesh in minutes if I touched it directly, so it's better than swimming. I load my cargo carefully, placing everything in the center where the raft is most stable, then push off from the shore with a length of pipe I use as a pole and paddle. The Sump Sea stretches out before me, surface thick and iridescent like oil, but worse, bubbling gently in places where chemical reactions release gases from below. Chemical fog banks drift across the water, clouds of vapor so thick they block vision beyond a few meters. Things move beneath the surface sometimes. You can see them when they disturb the thick liquid, shapes too large and too wrong to be anything natural. The sump spiders hunt in these waters, massive arachnids whose eyes are pure diamond, who feed on the smaller mutant creatures that crawl through the waste. Spider hunters come down from Sump City sometimes, sailing harpoon barges crewed by desperate men who risk death for the fortune contained in a single spider eye. I've been on the water for maybe 10 minutes when I see the shape approaching from my right, moving too deliberately to be random current. A sump spider, small by their standards, which means only the size of a cargo hauler, its legs creating ripples as it glides beneath the surface. The diamond eyes catch what little light exists down here, glinting like stars in the darkness, beautiful and terrifying. I freeze, letting the raft drift, not making any sudden movements that might draw its attention. Sump spiders can overturn a raft like mine with a single leg sweep, can pluck a human from the water like picking fruit from a tree. The spider surfaces 10 meters away, its bulk rising from the toxic water like a nightmare made flesh. Chitin plates cover its body in overlapping sections, each plate thick enough to stop a last bolt, corroded by decades of exposure to chemicals, but still armor-strong. It pauses there, motionless except for the constant small movements of its legs maintaining position, its cluster of eyes fixing on my raft with alien intelligence. I know what it's thinking, can see it in the way those eyes focus. Prey or not prey, threat or not threat, worth the effort or not. I slowly reach for my pipe, knowing it's useless against something this large, but needing the comfort of a weapon anyway. The spider moves faster than something that size should be able to move, legs propelling it forward in a surge that sends toxic water splashing across the raft. One leg crashes down on the edge, puncturing the plasteel sheeting, sending me stumbling backwards as the raft tilts dangerously. I strike at the leg with my pipe, the impact jarring my arms, feeling like hitting solid metal. The spider doesn't even seem to notice, just hooks that leg under the raft edge and starts to tip it over. Everything goes into the water. The copper wiring, my tools, me. The sump sea burns on contact, even through my clothes, chemical fire eating at exposed skin. I thrash to the surface, gasping, feeling the toxic water working its way into my mouth, my nose, my eyes. The filtration mask container is still in my hand somehow. I'd grabbed it instinctively before going under, and I use my free hand to swim toward the raft, which is now capsized and barely floating. The spider circles me, considering those diamond eyes catching the faint bioluminescence from the water. It could kill me easily. I'm helpless here, already poisoned and getting weaker by the second. But it doesn't attack. Maybe I'm too small to bother with, too contaminated to eat safely, or maybe it's already fed today and this was just territorial behavior. The spider disappears back into the depths, leaving me alone with my sinking raft and my burning skin. I managed to flip the raft back over, managed to climb on despite my arms shaking with exhaustion and toxin exposure, but everything else is gone. The copper wiring, 3 hours of work, sank into water so thick and chemical-laden that recovering it would be suicide. My tools, my weapons, everything except the clothes on my back and the filtration mask I'm still clutching. I've lost everything except the one thing I was planning to trade. The remainder of the crossing is agony. My skin burns where the sump water touched it, already blistering into chemical burns that will take weeks to heal if they heal at all. My throat feels raw, my lungs struggling to process air that's been contaminated by toxic vapors. But I keep the raft moving, keep poling toward the far shore, because stopping means death and I'm not dead yet. By the time I reach the opposite bank, I'm barely conscious, barely able to pull the raft up far enough that it won't drift away. I collapse on the relatively solid ground, the filtration mask container pressed against my chest, and just breathe through the pain for long minutes. The trading post sits another half-kilometer inland from the shore, built into the ruins of an old maintenance station. It's semi-permanent, meaning it's been here for at least 5 years, without being abandoned or destroyed, which makes it reliable by sump bottom standards. Ramshackle stalls constructed from scrap metal and broken machinery line a central space maybe 20 meters across, with suspicious dealers and desperate buyers conducting business in the eternal twilight of chemical torchlight. The stall owners are veterans of the sump bottom, people who've survived long enough to accumulate goods and establish themselves in one location rather than wandering the tunnels like rats. I arrive looking like death, which is normal for this place. Everyone here is poisoned, mutated, scarred, barely human by civilized standards. A one-eyed woman sells fungus cultivated in special growth chambers, the good fungus that actually provides nutrition instead of just filling your stomach. A servitor stands in one corner, a tech priest's assistant that malfunctioned decades ago and got dumped down here, now performing basic repairs on equipment for anyone who can pay. A gang representative, probably from one of the Sump city groups, watches the crowd with calculating eyes. looking for recruits or slaves or threats. And there, in the back corner where he's been setting up shop for longer than anyone remembers, I see old Vex. Vex is ancient by Sump bottom standards, maybe 50 standard years old, though he looks 70. His skin is like worn leather stretched over prominent bones, covered in radiation scars and chemical burns, layered like geological strata. One arm is mostly metal now, crude augmentation he performed on himself after the original limb rotted off. His eyes are clouded with cataracts, but he sees more than most people with perfect vision, reads body language and subtle tells with the precision of someone who's survived through observation and intelligence rather than strength. He's seen me approach. I can tell by the way his head tilts, tracking my movement through the crowd. "Ren," he says as I reach his stall, voice rough as grinding stone. "You look worse than usual. Chemical exposure?" "Sump spider," I respond, setting the filtration mask container on his counter carefully. "Lost everything except this. Need to trade." Vex picks up the container with his good hand, turning it over, examining the seal, his clouded eyes suddenly sharp with interest. "Sealed container, archaeotech mask. This is valuable, Ren. This is months of food, medicine, clean water. This is life." "I know," I say, "because I do know." I held that mask for 3 hours of transit, felt its weight both physical and symbolic, understood what I was carrying. I need food and medicine now, and I heard a rumor about a weapons cache, lower levels than where I usually scavenge. I need directions. Vex considers this, his metal fingers drumming on the counter in a rhythm that sounds almost musical. "Food and medicine I can do. Standard package, dried protein, fungus rations, chemical filters for water, antiseptic for those burns. Medicine? I've got infection suppressants, pain blocks, wound sealant that cover what you need. Also ammunition," I add, "for a gun I don't have yet. Future investment." "Auto pistol rounds or last pack?" "Auto pistol. Last packs need charging infrastructure I don't have access to." Vex nods slowly. Smart thinking. Ammunition keeps better than food, doesn't degrade, can be traded easily. You're planning ahead, which means you're serious about surviving long term. I respect that. He disappears into the back of his stall, emerging a moment later with wrapped packages and a small sealed box that rattles with ammunition. "This is good trade. Fair value for what you're offering. As for the weapons cache..." He leans in close, voice dropping to a whisper. "Lower levels. Beneath the normal sump bottom, there's territory that's been abandoned even by the mutants. Collapsed sections from the dark age of technology, structures that predate the Imperium itself. The depth makes the toxins worse, radiation stronger, but it also means better salvage. Gang war happened down there maybe 5 years back. Rust runners fought the Sump dwellers over archaeotech hunting rights. Neither side won. Both sides lost their expeditions, left their equipment behind. If you can find the battlefield, you'll find weapons. Just be careful, Ren." That deep, things get strange. "Strange how?" I ask. "Because information is survival. Strange like reality doesn't work right. Strange like the shadows move wrong. Strange like people who go down there come back different if they come back at all." Vex's expression is serious, more serious than I've ever seen him. The deep sump isn't just toxic, it's corrupted. Warp corruption, chaos taint, something that shouldn't exist bleeding through the materium. You go down there, you take that risk. I gather my trade goods, loading them into a salvaged bag, and think about Vex's warning. Warp corruption in the sump bottom makes sense in a horrible way. The Imperium teaches that chaos is always present, always waiting for opportunities, always seeking to corrupt and destroy. Down here, at the absolute bottom of everything, where reality is already thin and weak, where suffering and death are constant, chaos would find easy purchase. But I need weapons if I'm going to survive long term, and this is the only lead I have. Before I leave the trading post, I see them, a group of Hive gangers passing through on their way to somewhere deeper or higher. They're from Sump City, probably, or maybe one of the settlements higher up the abyss, come down here for reasons of their own. They carry working lace guns, the power packs charged and ready, visible in worn but functional holsters. They wear actual clothing, not rags, sturdy gang leathers that provide real protection. They have functioning lights mounted on their equipment, wrist lamps and shoulder spots that push back the darkness like it's nothing. They move with confidence, with purpose, like people who know they can handle whatever the sump bottom throws at them. I watch them pass and feel something twist in my chest. These are the poor of the Hive. These are the dregs of Hive society, the gangers who couldn't make it in the city proper, who got exiled or fled or just never belonged anywhere else. These are the bottom of normal society. And yet they live like kings compared to me. Their worst day is my best day. Their poverty is my impossible dream of wealth. I find old Vex still at his stall, packing away goods for the night. Could I ever make it up there? I ask him, the words coming out before I can stop them. To the Hive proper, to Sump City even? Vex looks at me with something like pity in his clouded eyes. Ren, you've got 6 fingers on one hand, scales growing on your back, lesions that won't close, and you probably glow faintly in complete darkness from all the radiation exposure. You're mutated, poisoned, broken in ways that can't be fixed. Even if you made it to Sump City, even if you climbed all the way up the abyss to Dust Falls, they'd kill you. The gangs shoot mutants on sight if they look too far gone, and you look too far gone. The Underhive has rules, has structure, has limits on what they'll accept. We're past those limits down here. This is the Sump bottom. This is where things fall when they're too broken for anywhere else. So we just exist here, scavenge and survive and die. We exist here, Vex confirms. Some of us longer than others. The Sump bottom is a one-way trip, Ren. You're born here or you fall here, but you don't leave. You make the best of it. You find your territories, you establish your roots, you survive another day. That's all there is. The weight of his words settles on me like the weight of the Hive above, crushing and absolute. There is no escape. There is no better future. There is only this, only now, only the endless grind of survival in the dark. The Emperor protects, the saying goes, but the Emperor doesn't protect us. We're too far down, too far gone, too far outside the realm where protection reaches. We're the expendable waste of Imperial civilization, the broken meat that couldn't serve any other purpose, left to rot in the darkness at the bottom of everything. I leave the trading post as night falls, though night and day mean nothing down here where darkness is constant. My new supplies weigh heavy in my bag. Proof of successful trade, resources that will keep me alive for weeks if I'm careful. The chemical burns from the Sump Sea crossing ache with every movement, but the pain is manageable, familiar, just another layer of suffering added to the baseline. I take the long route back to my sleeping pocket, avoiding the main tunnels, moving carefully through passages I've memorized over years of scavenging. The decision forms as I walk. I'll investigate the weapons cache Vex mentioned. I'll descend into the deep sump, into territory so dangerous even mutants avoid it, and I'll find those weapons. Not because I'm brave or ambitious or stupid enough to think I can change anything, but because having an auto pistol and ammunition represents power, represents security, represents a better chance of survival. And survival is the only goal that matters down here. Days pass in the darkness. I lose track of time easily when there's no cycle of light to measure by, when every moment feels the same as the last. Could be 3 days, could be 7, could be longer. I eat my rations carefully, treat my burns with the medicine Vex traded me, and prepare for the descent into the deep sump. The preparation is practical, checking my remaining tools, planning my route, making sure I know how to get back if things go wrong. But there's psychological preparation too, steeling myself for what I might find, accepting that this could be the last scavenging run I ever make. The descent begins at a crack in the floor of my sleeping pocket, a fissure that drops straight down into darkness so complete my chemical torch barely penetrates it. I've known about this crack for years, but never went down because there was never a reason to risk it. Now there is. I tie off a length of cable to a support pillar and lower myself hand over hand, the cable rough against my palms, my muscles straining with my weight. The drop is maybe 15 meters, ending in a passage that slopes downward at a steep angle, floor slick with condensation and worse things. The temperature increases as I descend, heat rising from the planet's core, turning the air thick and humid. Sweat runs down my body despite the chill of the darkness, mixing with the chemical burns on my skin, making everything sting. The structures around me change character, becoming older, more ancient, the architecture alien in ways that make my head hurt if I look too long. This isn't imperial construction. This is something from before, from the dark age of technology when humanity built things that would make the current Imperium weep with envy and fear. I find the first body after 2 hours of descent. A ganger, dead for maybe 5 years, judging by the advanced decomposition, his gear corroded but still visible. Rust runner's colors on his clothing, a broken auto pistol still clutched in skeletal fingers. I pry the gun from his grip carefully, examining it in my torchlight. The barrel is cracked, the firing mechanism corroded beyond repair, but the presence of the body confirms Vex's information. The gang war happened here, and the survivors never came back for their dead. More bodies appear as I continue down. Rust runners and sump dwellers scattered through the passages like discarded toys, their weapons and gear stripped by whoever found them first, but not all of them. Some bodies lie in places so difficult to reach, so dangerous to access, that previous scavengers avoided them. These are the corpses I'm interested in. I find a sump dweller wedged in a crack in the wall, his auto pistol and ammunition still strapped to his chest. The gun is corroded but functional after I spend 30 minutes cleaning the mechanisms, and the ammunition box contains 43 rounds of usable ammunition. 43 chances to kill something. 43 opportunities to defend myself. 43 reasons to feel slightly less powerless in this horrible place. I load the auto pistol with shaking hands, feeling its weight, its reality, the way it changes the balance of power between me and everything else down here. I'm still small, still weak, still mutated and poisoned and dying slowly. But now I have a gun. Now I'm dangerous in ways that matter. The sealed container sits in an alcove maybe 20 meters further down, protected from casual observation by fallen debris. Inside, spare ammunition, cleaning supplies, even a working power cell that my torch can plug into for recharging. This is the cache Vex mentioned, the treasure left behind by gangers who died before claiming it. I load everything into my bag, my shoulders straining with the weight, feeling rich in a way I never have before. This is more value than I've accumulated in years of scavenging, more resources than I dreamed of owning. But something feels wrong. The air tastes different down here, not just toxic, but wrong somehow, like reality is slightly rotted. The shadows move in ways that don't match my torchlight, stretching and contracting independent of any light source. The temperature fluctuates without reason, hot, then cold, then hot again in the span of seconds. And there's sound, or maybe not sound exactly, but something my ears interpret as sound. Whispering at frequencies just below audible, suggestions of words that might be high Gothic or might be something older and worse. I'm moving back toward the cable when I see it. A chamber opened by collapsed walls, revealing a space that shouldn't exist here. The architecture is wrong, angles that hurt to perceive, surfaces that seem to fold in on themselves in impossible ways. And in the center of that chamber, partially submerged in a pool of fluid that glows with unnatural purple light, something massive moves. Not moved, present tense, moving now, something that was never human, never natural, never meant to exist in the Imperium. I get impressions rather than clear sight, because my mind refuses to fully process what it's seeing. Tentacles, but not like any creature's tentacles, things that seem to exist in more than 3 dimensions, reaching out into spaces that shouldn't be reachable. Eyes that burn with light that isn't light, that see into places light can't reach, that focus on me with intelligence that predates humanity's existence. Reality warps around it, the stones beneath it flowing like liquid, the air above it crackling with colors that don't have names in any human language. This is warp corruption made manifest, chaos given physical form, a thing from the Imperium bleeding through into reality. I run. No analysis, no consideration, just pure animal panic driving my legs to move faster than they've ever moved before. The auto pistol forgotten in my hand, the supplies forgotten on my back. Everything forgotten except the need to escape this place, to put distance between myself and that thing that should not exist. I hear it behind me. Or maybe I feel it, or maybe the sounds are happening in my head. Movement that creates wind where there shouldn't be wind. Presence that creates pressure where there shouldn't be pressure. Existence that creates wrongness in reality itself. The cable hangs where I left it, salvation in woven metal, and I climb with desperate speed that tears my hands bloody against the rough fibers. Up through the fissure, up through the darkness, up toward the relatively safe horror of the normal sump bottom. The thing doesn't pursue, either can't leave its chamber or chooses not to, contained by something or simply uninterested in prey as insignificant as me. I reach my sleeping pocket and collapse, gasping, feeling my heart hammer against my ribs with terror so pure it becomes physical pain. Hours later, maybe days later, I managed to calm myself enough to think. I met Gren again during my panicked flight back through the tunnels, the mutant emerging from a side passage and recognizing my terror immediately. We talked once I could breathe again, once I could form words instead of just whimpering. Gren knows of the thing in the deep sump. Most of the long-time scavengers do. The old mother, Gren calls it, the sump birth, the thing that feeds. The worst mutations aren't from radiation, Gren explains. The twisted limbs, the extra growths, the way reality sometimes doesn't quite work right around the most changed mutants. That's all from proximity to the thing below. The deep sump is infected with warp corruption, with chaos taint that seeps up through the rock like toxic groundwater. And we, the scavengers and mutants of the sump bottom, we live on top of it, we breathe it, we absorb it into our bodies every single day. Why doesn't it come up? I ask, my voice still shaky. Why doesn't it hunt through the tunnels, kill everything? Contained, Gren says simply. Or chooses not to, maybe both. The sump bottom exists as a buffer, expendable lives keeping that thing separated from the underhive above. We're the Imperium's unwitting first defense. We don't matter enough to save, but we matter enough to keep between the thing below and the people above. The knowledge settles on me like another weight, another layer of horror added to an already horrific existence. We're not just forgotten down here. We're not just abandoned, not just expendable waste of civilization. We're a sacrifice, a barrier of suffering flesh between the civilized world and the chaos that wants to consume it. The Imperium knows, or if they don't know specifically, they know in general, that the deep places need watching, need guarding, need expendable lives to die quietly in the dark. And we're it. We're the watchers. We're the guards. We're the expendable lives. The Emperor's mercy is non-existent this far down. There is no protection for us. There is no salvation. There is only the knowledge that our suffering serves a purpose, even if that purpose is just existing as a buffer between civilization and damnation. Days pass again. Time losing meaning in the darkness. I establish a new routine with my auto pistol and supplies. I form a tentative alliance with Gren and 2 other scavengers I encounter regularly. A woman missing both eyes but navigating by sound and touch with frightening accuracy, and a man so mutated his original human form is barely discernible beneath layers of warped flesh. We share information, watch each other's backs in the dangerous territories, split fines according to who needs what most. Small victories accumulate. I find a better shelter, a pocket with 3 exits instead of 1, more defensible against ambush. I establish a safe scavenging route that avoids the most dangerous territories while still accessing decent salvage. I discover a patch of the nutritious fungus that I can cultivate in a concealed location. These aren't triumphs. These aren't achievements worth celebrating, but they're improvements, small steps toward a slightly less horrible existence. The degradation continues too. New mutations appearing, my cough getting worse, lesions that heal slower each time. But also small joys in the horror. A day without violence, a particularly good find of sealed rations. Shared fungus wine with Gren, the fermented mixture foul tasting but intoxicating enough to dull the pain for a few hours. A moment of laughter at a joke too dark to be funny anywhere but down here where everything is already as dark as it can get. I understand now what old Vex tried to tell me. This is life now. There is no rescue coming, no escape route to discover, no better future to work toward. There is only today and tomorrow and the next scavenge and the constant struggle to not die. But there's something in that too, something almost like purpose. To survive is itself an act of defiance. To continue existing in a place designed to kill you, that's a statement. That's saying the universe hasn't beaten you yet, even if it's close. Standing in my sleeping pocket, I look upward through kilometers of Hive City pressing down on me. Somewhere up there, beyond my sight, beyond my comprehension, beyond any distance I could ever travel, the nobility lives in luxury. They eat real food, breathe real air, never think about the sump bottom or the people dying in the dark to keep their world functioning. Their waste, their trash, their sins, all of it flows down here, accumulating in the toxic lake I have to cross to trade my salvage. They benefit from our suffering without acknowledging our existence. I whisper the Emperor's prayer, the words taught to me by my mother before she died, the litany every Imperial citizen knows by heart. But I know the truth now. No one is listening. The Emperor, if he even still lives, is too busy with larger concerns to care about a single mutant scavenger in the depths of a random Hive world's sump bottom. The Imperium, vast and terrible and indifferent, has no thoughts for the things at the bottom except as resources to be exploited and barriers to be maintained. In the grim darkness of the far future, there is only war. That's what they say. But beneath that war, beneath the battlefields and the strategic calculations and the grand schemes of humanity's survival, there is the sump bottom. There are places like this where people struggle and die without glory, without recognition, without meaning, where suffering is constant and relief is temporary and death is certain, even if the timing remains uncertain. I light my chemical torch, check my rebreather, grip my auto pistol with my 6-fingered hand. Tomorrow I'll scavenge again. Tomorrow I'll navigate the tunnels and avoid the mutants and search through rubble for anything of value. Tomorrow I'll breathe air that burns and drink water that tastes like poison and eat fungus that provides just enough nutrition to keep me alive another day. Because to stop is to die, and I'm not dead yet. A young ganger appears at the border of my territory 3 days later. Exiled from Sump City for failure, probably, or fled from Underhive justice, or just unlucky enough to fall deeper than anyone should fall. Lost, terrified, completely unprepared for the reality of the sump bottom. I recognized the look in his eyes because I must have had that same look when I was younger, before the years ground it away. The look of someone who still thinks they might survive, who still has hope, who hasn't yet learned what this place does to hope. I could rob him. He's got gear I need, a functioning knife, sealed water containers, ration packs that look like they came from actual Imperial stores. He's weak, untrained in sump bottom survival, easy prey. I could take everything and leave him to die in the dark. That's what this place teaches you to do. Prey on the weak, take what you need, survive at any cost. Instead, I share water from my filtered supply. I show him how to wrap rags around his face to breathe slightly safer. I warn him about the deep sections and the thing that lives there. He asks how long I've survived down here, and I realize I don't know the answer anymore. Long enough to forget counting days. Long enough to mutate. Long enough to accept that this is permanent. "Does it get easier?" he asks, voice breaking slightly on the last word. "No," I tell him, because lying would be cruel. "You just get harder. You learn to function through pain and fear and constant danger. You learn to measure time in scavenging runs instead of days. You learn to be grateful for the slightly less horrible moments. And eventually, if you're lucky and careful and ruthless when you need to be, you forget what anything else felt like." He's crying, trying to hide it, but failing. I let him cry. Everyone cries in the sump bottom, at least at first. You either get it out early, or it builds up inside until it breaks you. Better to cry now in front of someone who understands than to cry alone in the dark when crying might attract things that hunt by sound. We part ways after I've shared what information I can, after he's got the basics of survival etched into his terrified mind. He asks where he can find me if he needs help again, and I tell him where my territory borders Gren's territory, the markers to look for, the signs that indicate safe passage. He disappears into the tunnels, another lost soul trying to make sense of the senseless, trying to survive in a place designed to kill him. I watch him go and feel something I haven't felt in years. Not quite compassion, not quite hope, but something adjacent to both. A reminder that even down here, in the absolute worst place in Imperial civilization, humanity persists. Connection persists. The basic decency that made us human in the first place persists even when everything else has been stripped away. This is the horrible life of a Hive Sump scavenger. Tomorrow I'll live it again, and the day after that, and the day after that, until one day I don't. Until one day the toxins finally overwhelm my system, or a mutant catches me during a scavenge, or I make one wrong step and fall into depths even darker than where I already exist. But until that day comes, I endure. I survive. I continue to exist in defiance of everything trying to kill me. Because at the bottom of the universe, in the darkest places where the Emperor's light can't reach, there are still people. Still humans, or close enough to humans that the distinction doesn't matter. Still lives being lived, still stories being told in the dark, still resistance against the void that wants to consume everything. The torch burns low in my hand, chemical fuel nearly exhausted, casting wavering shadows on walls that weep with toxic condensation. I extinguish it to conserve what remains, letting the darkness return, familiar and absolute. In the darkness I can hear the sounds of the sump bottom, dripping water, distant collapses, far-off mutant calls, the subtle creaking of structures that have been slowly dying for millennia. I am Ren. I survive in the sump bottom. This is my life, and tomorrow I will live it again.